Aftab. Yeah, so my name is Usman Aftab. I'm the portfolio finance manager working for NatWest, and we've also got Natalie Tirant working for Barclays as head of partner proposition in payments. So although we are rivals in terms of the banking world, I think it's always good to come together for a common goal to help the students with regards to employability. So if we can move to slide number 2, please. I'll give a bit of an introduction about myself. So I work as portfolio finance manager, and my role is to look after budget, which is used in implementing technologies to make the mortgage journey for our customers as smooth as possible. So when you go to buy a house, you ask for a loan from the bank, and we, as our department, we want to make sure that your process to get that loan is as smooth as possible. You get money as quick as possible, because home buying is quite important milestone in anybody's life. So we do look after that, and I'm kind of a custodian trying to look after the budget within that. Anyway, so I'll talk about my history. So I migrated from Italy to the UK back in 2012. So it's been exactly 10 years since I moved to UK, particularly in Glasgow, Scotland. I know some of you, or majority of you, might be international students. So I can understand some of the challenges that you guys had to face when you moved from kind of back home from your countries into the UK for the purposes of study. And I have faced that kind of challenge as well. Being away from the family wasn't always the best thing to do. And then sometimes you kind of struggle financially as well. So I saw all of that, which was hard, but I guess, you know, you have to face any challenge that you get in life. Then when I came into the UK, I decided to study accountancy at Glasgow Kelvin College. So I did my HNC and HND there. For those who are not aware, HND stands for Higher National Diploma. It was an interesting journey because my high school in Italy was all focused around engineering, electronical engineering. So I did study all kind of maths, physics, chemistry, everything you name it, apart from accountancy. So I decided to move all of a sudden because I thought when I came to Scotland, engineering wasn't for me. And I spoke to a few people who gave me honest opinion about a career in accountancy, and I decided to take that step. While studying, I had the opportunity to start working for Lloyds Banking Group, one of the big banks in the UK. I started as a phone bank assistant, so I was in the call center answering basic questions of the customers, doing their kind of day-to-day banking over the phone, and then I progressed further from there. To be honest, that was quite a difficult period for me as well. So having recently moved from a country to another, then studying as well as working at the same time, I was actually working full-time there and studying, so coping both at the same time was quite difficult. Probably one of the most challenging phases in my life, I would say, because I was constantly either in college or at work. I had no social life, but I guess I saved some money as well because I had no social life, as you can understand. So that helped me. It wasn't as bad, but definitely something that gave me motivation to go further up, which is, I think, is always important when you're a student. Try not to get off track. Try to focus on your goals, education, as well as your employment. Then if you see further down, so I decided to then pursue my degree in accountancy at the University of the West of Scotland. And I graduated in 2017. So I've got bachelor's in accounting honors. I got 2-1. So it was a great phase for me there. I got to know some great friends. Some of the lecturers there, they were really fantastic. The way they taught us. A couple of names that I would like to mention is Angela Dunlop, Dr. Marie Fletcher, as well as Abir Hassan. So they've been great. So some of the names that helped me to kind of go through that accountancy, take accountancy as a career going forward as well. Yeah, so I'm still again studying and working at the same time. So the idea of talking to you about my journey is to make sure that you can take the challenges, you can try to juggle both, working as well as education at the same time. After completing my degree, I had the opportunity to join NatWest Group, also known as Royal Bank of Scotland, on their graduate program in September 2018. So just a year after graduating, I got the opportunity to get in there. So the graduate program, however, was more tailored around project management. So I had the opportunity to stay on the program for a couple of years. I did 4 placements in different areas within the bank, and I got like different skills, different technical knowledge as well about project management. But after completing the program, I decided my future lied in numerical background, numerical working environment. Hence, I decided to roll off in a role which was more finance related. So I decided to role as a financial analyst in the area where I'm currently working. And from there, then I recently got promoted as a finance manager within the portfolio. So you can see kind of the journey I've done. One more thing, last thing that I would like to add. So I'm studying CIMA, it's Chartered Management Accountancy, to obtain a professional accountancy qualification. Now, that's not something which is like a requirement of my role. And it's not even like my employer are pushing me so hard to do it. It's just, I think, for my personal development perspective, I think it's important to go through that continuous development process, because once you take a break, it's very hard to go back. It's very hard to come out of your comfort zone. So I just want to constantly challenge myself in order to develop myself professionally and personally. And hence that is the reason I've decided to study CIMA. Obviously, that will help me to get sort of further up in the career as well. So that's obviously another positive sign. So without any further delay, I would like to ask Natalie to present herself, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Usman. It's I know we worked together to pull this together over the last few days, but I really enjoyed that overview. Actually, it gave me a lot more information about you that I didn't know. So thank you very much. So my name's Natalie. I'm head of partner propositions for Barclays Payments. And so yeah, I mean, this is just the kind of journey that I've gone on. So my starting kind of path at UWS was based at the Paisley campus. I had so many good memories in that campus as well, and still have a lot of friends that I keep in touch with as well. Lecturers, I'm not sure where on earth they are anymore. I don't know what's going on with the degree that I chose, but anyway, it was fantastic. So a little bit about myself. I currently live in Cambridge. I relocated about 10-11 years ago now. So currently live here with my husband and my 2-year-old lockdown baby, which was a barrel of laughs. And I enjoy horse riding on the weekends. A little bit about myself. So at UWS, I started my academic journey in social sciences, and that involved like psychology, politics, sociology, and economics. But what I found is that I wasn't really interested in a lot of the other modules. I much preferred economics. That's kind of like just where my interests lie. And I made the decision in second year to start specialising within economics, and I changed my degree with a lot of help from the careers team and the lecturers as well, just to make sure that I was making the right choice, because it is obviously quite a big step. So I changed my degree to economics, and that just opened up a whole world of opportunities for me, because when you're passionate about something, you really start chasing all available avenues. And I found that I got kind of involved in what was once called the Saltire programme, which is now called, I think it's Entrepreneurial Scotland, which is an organisation that basically sends Scottish students, preferably, Scottish students abroad from Scottish universities to kind of all areas of the world. So with the view to really harnessing talent and keeping it in Scotland, basically. So I'm a bit of a, my name's Mud because I'm in Cambridge now, but that's kind of what they were trying to do. So so as part of that process to really get involved, it was in my third year that I really kind of found out about this, and I used the careers team to help me get into that process. It was quite a lot of applications and interviews and a lot of kind of like follow-up phone interviews face to face. It was a very rigorous process. So I used one of their colleagues, Nigel Royal, who really helped me through that. He helped me kind of craft my answers, my competency-based kind of interview style, everything. So I ended up being successful, and I landed a role with DHL in Singapore for 2 months over the summer, and that was around compensations and benefits analysis. So very dry, but when I was out there, it's more the experience that they try and give you more than the actual kind of day-to-day role. It's what you can learn through that role. So I was there for 2 months, learned a whole host of stuff around kind of what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do from that. So came back to university for my final year, like fresh-faced, knew exactly where I was going, and that's when I graduated with a 2-1 in business economics. And it's a funny old time, your fourth year, because you're trying to balance interviews, preparing for kind of graduate scheme processes, but also doing your dissertation, doing all the kind of standard stuff. So it's quite a stressful time, I found. And I know that the careers team offer loads of services now that can help through that. But yeah, it's a funny old time. So I managed to land a graduate scheme with a company called Aviva, who do specialist computer-aided design software for oil and gas. So it's not something that I was really passionate about at the time. I didn't really know much about it, but the graduate scheme was fantastic. It was very similar to what Usman was talking about. 2 years in total, split up into 4 rotations where you have 6 months focusing on different areas. So there was product marketing, there was sales, channel management, and commercial management. And it just helps as a business student see where your niche is, those sorts of graduate schemes. And I know they're very common now. So when I finished, I decided I wanted to go into commercial management. That's where I found kind of my passion lay. And I was commercial manager there for about a year before I was internally headhunted to head up the sales operations team in the company that were basically looking to train sellers on how to sell, tell a story with customers, land more sales. So it was really fun actually. And I was in that role for a while. What I decided at that point was that it's quite a big company. So it's global. So I was able to travel to different offices around the world, which was phenomenal, like China, America. It was brilliant. But I found that I wanted to try something else out while I was still kind of like what I felt was kind of young in my career. So I wanted to kind of go to a smaller company. So I was passionate about animals. So I thought vet CT, telemedicine, in the veterinary sector, that sounds really fun. So I got a role as client strategy manager at VetCT, and after a couple of months I realized, oh my god, I need the crutch of a big organization, more resources, and that's when I decided, no, small organizations not for me. I like the bigger kind of chunkier companies, and that's when I joined Barclaycard. So I've been here for about just over 5 years, and a lot of that was within the strategy team, kind of managing our sector strategy for the UK, managing how we were going to take our products abroad, and really kind of getting under the skin of who our target market were, and starting to design that and then embed it in the organisation. So it was a really fun role. And then late last year, I came back from maternity leave and I joined as a kind of vice president, internally known as, or a head of kind of partner propositions. So it was so now relatively senior in the organisation, and I feel like this is kind of passionate about payments. I'm at a really good space, and I feel like this journey has been kind of the right one for me. There's nothing that I would look back on and say that I would regret kind of trying a smaller company, for example. At that point, it all led me to where I am now. But some of the things that Usman and I wanted to kind of talk to you about were looking at our journeys, what learnings did we take from them, and what sort of tips can we share with you guys today. And I think for me, when I started thinking about it, a lot of my journey was really influenced by something really quite fluffy, and it was presentation skills. And I know it's hammered into us at university that you need to work on them, develop them, practice. But for me, I didn't really listen at the time. And it was only when I got into corporate life and going into graduate schemes and realizing you have to present to really show yourself off and really showcase your skills. And you can use this to really differentiate yourself from other candidates as well, because obviously it's a very competitive market. So any tips to differentiate always go well. So what I wanted to do was start talking you through some of the techniques and the secret formulas is what we call it in Barclays, of how to structure that presentation and really how to get started as well. So I think what we all know is that all great presentations have this kind of like beginning, middle and end. And what I wanted to kind of go through was this formula, how to set it up, and then give you a couple of examples of this formula in action, really, because you can see it in quite a lot of presentations. And now that I'll tell you this, you'll start recognizing it as well. And so, I mean, here we've got the greatest communicators of all time. So you've got Martin Luther King on the right, and then you've got Steve Jobs on the left with his 2007 iPhone launch speech. And they all follow this framework. So the beginning, the middle, the end is kind of standard practice. But what we want to do is break that down to be, what does that look like in each element of the presentation? How can you tell a story as you're engaging with recruiters, as you're engaging with your colleagues? And really what we want to do is at the beginning of any of these presentations, you want to really establish what is. So here's the status quo. And then you need to compare that to what could be. And this has to be the biggest gap possible, basically. Because what we're doing is we're going to show the past, the present and the future. So here's the problem, and then here's the problem removed. And you can do this in quite crafty ways when you're doing your recruitment presentations. So what they'll typically do is ask you to answer a problem around what are, I don't know, top trends in the UK market right now when it comes to consumer behaviour, as an example. And what you can start doing is you can show them the top trends, but then you can show them what they're going to move towards. So it's that gap that you're starting to create, and then you create excitement, forward thinking as well. So when you get to the middle, this goes back and forth between kind of what is, what could be. You're comparing the future and the status quo. And what we're trying to do is really make that status quo as unappealing as possible, to say that this is what it is today, but the future is going to be absolutely phenomenal. And you draw them in towards kind of what could be adopted, and it gets people excited, and they start to come on this journey with you. And sometimes in these presentations, I know in the corporate world, you can come up against quite a lot of resistance. So when you start to show a future state, it can be, the audience can go, oh, I don't really know about that. But that resistance gets you there quicker, because you've shown that you actually, you know that there's going to be these risks, but you've answered it early on, and you've covered that. And really after this, at the very end, you have the kind of action. And this is really which every presentation has to have. You have to have this kind of this closing end. And at the very end, we need to describe this new bliss, new normal. You've taken them on this journey, and this is what the market, for example, is going to look like, and it's going to be amazing. And really, this should be this kind of big dramatic unveiling that really gets them excited and confirms, yes, this person knows exactly what the UK market's doing. They know absolutely everything. They've done their homework, and yeah, they've taken me on this journey. So it should be a real closing point. And really using the examples like Steve Jobs and Martin Luther King, both of their speeches kind of followed this format, but where they differed is really how they told this story. So Steve Jobs, he was really great at getting the audience kind of bought in and being active participants in all his presentations. He would regularly add kind of like lots of marveling statements like, "Isn't this amazing?" And when you do that, it draws people into you. So I even do it day to day now that I've kind of followed this framework. If we're trying to look at a payment strategy for the UK market, we always start the presentation with, "Isn't this an exciting time to be in payments? And isn't this just the most innovative time? In the past few years, everything's changed," and instantly it draws people in. So if you can share a passion and an excitement, that draws recruiters in as well, because they see, right, they're really passionate about this. They're really going to show me something special. And the audience followed this completely. So if you watch this on YouTube, you'll see it. So his passion was really infectious when he was doing this speech. And in the speech, he had quite a lot of technical problems, which was quite ironic. But he had like the clicker when he was trying to flick through his slides would break. But instead of stopping this presentation, what he did was he would tell a personal story to fill in the time, and then he would carry on to that new bliss. So having a little personal element in there, showing that it doesn't phase you, it is what it is, things break, especially recruiters in the corporate world, they will not be phased by this, because every day they're attending calls where we're still asking after 2 years, "Can you see my screen yet?" Or "Can you hear me? Can you still hear me? Is everything okay?" They're not phased by technical problems. And then you've got Martin Luther King on the right-hand side. So he presented slightly differently, obviously being a clergyman. So his style was very rhythmic. He used a lot of pauses and most importantly, repetition. So he would often repeat phrases and points just to ensure that they stuck with his audience and that they could recall them as they were going through. And he also used a lot of metaphors to explain kind of complicated ideas in very simple ways so that people were able to really understand him and envision what he was saying. So I mean, that for me, when I found out about this sort of flow and their techniques, I started sort of trying to do it myself and started adopting it when I was doing storytelling for senior leaders. And it really does work. The feedback was always like, it comes across incredibly passionate, it drew us in. So if you can do this to a recruiter for graduate schemes, if this is something you've got to do, it will definitely set you apart in that process. And I mean, Usman, obviously I've talked through kind of presentation styles here, but I'm sure you've got some soft skills as well that you recommend.
Great. Thank you very much, Natalie. That was really useful. And I think some of the ideas that you've shared there, that's probably something that I would like to implement in my day-to-day kind of presentation when I've got them and I have to deliver them. So that was really useful. Yeah, I guess it's always important to have lots of skills to differentiate yourself in the market, to stand out basically. But some of the skills that which are kind of the soft skills, which is really good to have, are communication skills. So regardless of where you are, what you want to do in life, and obviously in terms of education as well, communication can have a massive impact. So we do communicate and interact with each other on a daily basis in form of like writing. It could be emails, or it could be also like a verbal communication. We do talk, especially as Natalie mentioned about presentations as well. So at work, you will see quite a lot of presentations happening. So it's important that we kind of cover that aspect. You know, we can understand the purpose of using different means, different channels. So when we are writing, for example, emails, you will probably adopt a different style. You want to make sure that anything that you write in the email makes sense and has a purpose. And think from the end user perspective. I think that's always important. So who's your end user? Who's your audience? Even when it comes to the presentation, try to understand the requirements of your end user, which I'll kind of cover in the stakeholder management bit as well. So nowadays we've got quite a lot of Zoom meetings due to COVID. So I think it makes a difference, especially when you're not talking to people face to face. So it's important to be confident in what you are saying, how you're interacting, how you are appearing, and make sure that you convey your message as clearly as possible. It's always important to, especially when you're communicating, it's always important to ask questions as well afterwards, just to make sure that everybody understands, especially if you're in a meeting. It could be a group work as well that you're doing in uni. Maybe it's always important to summarize at the end the actions that everybody needs to take to ensure that everybody is on the same page. Team working, that's another important one. So according to Zipia, more than 50% of the jobs in the US use teamwork. And I don't expect that to be any different in the UK or perhaps in the rest of the world as well. So if you are an effective team player, you can have a strong relationship. You can build strong relationship with your team, with your team members. And once you've built a good relationship with the team members, that automatically breaks the ice. It automatically let other people see you as a trusted advisor, as someone who can be seen of a good repute, someone that can be trusted, and especially if you're given some work to do, for instance, you are delivering up to the expectations. Okay, so it's important to be teamwork, and it's not just from your perspective. It's always important to understand others as well. I always say to people, look, if you are working in a team, try to understand, try to learn each other's strengths and weaknesses. And that will enable you to come together and try to have conversation at personal level as well. Even when we are at work, we always try to organize like fun days, charity days, volunteering days, where all the team comes together and we are talking about stuff which is non-work related. So it's always important to have that personal relationship as well. Stakeholder management. So with regards to stakeholder is someone who has interest in a project or a task that you perform. So that could be potentially your end user, or if you are working on a project at university, for example, a coursework or a report or a presentation, your team members could also be your stakeholders. So you all got like a common interest. Everybody wants to do well. Everybody wants to perform really well. So it's important to meet those standards, those expectations. And it's always important to understand what stakeholders' expectations are, what they expect of you. And I always say, ask those questions. If you don't ask questions, there might be some difference between what you understand against what they ask you to do. So it's always important to ask those questions. Is there anything that you want to add there, Natalie? I know I was talking about a few basic skills there.
Yeah, I think with the team working skill, what I would say is I remember team working at university being an absolute chore sometimes, because it depends who you get landed with, doesn't it? What I would say is that even the negative team working experiences can have good outcomes, because in your interview process, you'll be asked about a competency question that's always asked is, tell us about a time you had to work in a team, but you found it challenging, or you had to work with a challenging team member. And all those negative experiences of maybe people not helping, maybe people not understanding fully and producing something that wasn't the original ask, all of that will go towards your interview processes. So it's any negative experience can be turned into a good one. I would say that's all I would add, Usman.
That's great. Yeah, that's actually very, very true, because to change something from negative to positive is an art as well. It's a skill in itself. So I think we all do face failures in life, and it's important to not to feel let down by those failures. So thank you very much, Natalie, for sharing that. So yeah, some of the top tips. So in terms of the very first one, I think networking has an important role. According to a LinkedIn survey, 80% of professionals consider networking important to career success. So in my opinion, it's always important to know the right people, okay? People that you can seek the honest advice from, and people that can help you and guide you in kind of the best way possible and put you in the right direction, okay? It's no harm building connections, but do please build a connection with the right people if you want to be successful in life. And
Can I ask, before we go on, Usman, can I ask if everyone here has a LinkedIn profile? Can you do a little reaction or put in the chat, yeah, if you have a LinkedIn profile, just so that we can have a look and see how many. Yes, thumbs up. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot. That's great. That's good. I think LinkedIn is such an important tool, because with the job market the way it is right now, any kind of early start that you can get with a lot of these recruiters and a lot of these managers who are hiring come through LinkedIn connections. So a lot of kind of colleagues that I work with, they find their new roles through messaging managerial positions at kind of like possibly competitors, possibly others in the business. And that's how they find out jobs before they even get posted. So there's right ways to do it. If you look online, I think there's quite a lot of resources around how to craft the perfect like intro, that you're really interested in working for this company, but you don't know where to start. This is your experience, but it's doing it in not such a wordy way that just gets you in there. And that's how you find out about jobs that aren't even live yet. And because that's a lot of the approaches that work for new hiring managers. So I think LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. So if you don't have a profile already, I would strongly encourage it. And I would also encourage you to start looking at kind of how to make it pop as much as possible. Add as much information on there as you can, get your image on there, and then start kind of just being active on LinkedIn as well always helps. And I think that's the most important thing for me.
That's good. I was just going to ask, are you on LinkedIn, Natalie?
Yes.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yes, I have to be. I think as well, it does help with, but I know we're moving on to this, but it does help with this interview process as well. So a new feature of the interview process that is becoming more common, I would say, is that you might find that if you're not going for a standard graduate scheme, or potentially you are, it could overlap into that area as well. There's a new practice of using HR to screen a short list of individuals, and these HR screening calls, they almost lull you into this kind of false sense of security that they're just having a wee catch up, but they do have boxes to tick for the HR screening calls. And what we have started really promoting with colleagues in the bank, obviously as well, who are going for new jobs, is if you look at the job description of the role that you've applied for, there's always a skills section around who the candidate they want to hire looks like, what skills and attributes have they got. That HR screening call is a tick box against those items. So what you have to do for that interview is basically have a look at what individual bullets they're asking for. If you make a note before the call on where you've got experience of these, so that you've got it to hand, and then during that HR call, you'll be able to recall that very quickly, and they'll be able to tick the boxes that they've got in front of them to promote you for the next stage. Because a lot of times these HR calls come across as just being a little bit too informal, and it almost lulls you into that, oh, they're just wanting to catch up before the actual interview, but it's not. They do have a job to do as well. So I would always use those to your advantage, because they'll feed that back to the hiring manager, who knows a lot more about the role than HR do. They're just wanting your skills and attributes. So I think that's the kind of first point I wanted to call out around this new interview process that we've got. And then obviously we've talked about presentations as well. And then Usman, you were discussing earlier about this STAR technique with a C. So I think they've already covered the STAR technique. Lindsay was telling me earlier in the week, but could you give an overview of what this STAR is with a C?
Yeah, sure. So hopefully by now, if you followed Natalie's advice, you would have passed the first stage of the interview. And you got to the stage when you're speaking to the hiring manager and you've been asked to talk about some of the examples. If you get asked about competency, if you are going through a competency-based interview, based on your examples, some of the stuff that you've done. So in terms of STAR, so if you if you attended that session, so you would have known STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So that's kind of the format that people get suggested to follow during an interview process when answering their questions. However, I've found useful to use a C as well in between, and that C stands for challenge. So when you are talking about some of the actions that you've taken to cover your task that you have to fulfill, I always like to talk about the challenges that you faced. Okay, so that could be a challenge coming in from the team. It could be a challenge because you couldn't find the relevant information in time. And it could be a challenge because some of the process maybe broke or tool broke or something like that. So that shows how resilient you were and how you cope under pressure. And yeah, I find that challenge as well quite useful. So I would strongly recommend you going through that. The next bit is around mentoring. So a question to you, Natalie, do you have any mentors?
I do, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I feel like, so I mentor kind of other colleagues in the bank, as well as kind of graduates on the programme that the UWS careers team have. But I feel like even at a senior role, I still myself need business mentors to make sure that I'm continuing to develop alongside my goals. So it just helps you really ground yourself. I don't think it's something you use at the start of the journey. I think it's something that you continue as you go through your career. Do you have a mentor, Usman? I don't think you do you?
Well, I don't, I'm afraid, and I think you know, I feel a bit embarrassed now. I need to look for a mentor. It's definitely you know, it opens your options, it opens your path, because it helps you to see. The mentor can provide you the guidance and share their experiences, some of the challenges that they faced, and potentially they can also help with the CV reviews and interview techniques. So I'm currently mentoring a few students, a couple from UWS, and I've got a couple outside UWS as well. So, but unfortunately, to answer your question, I don't have a mentor at the moment.
Yeah, I wasn't going to call you out, but then I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it.
That's perfect. Yeah. So moving to our next top tip, it's about personal branding. So when I was with Lloyd's Banking Group, there was, so we had interaction with senior leaders, and one of the leaders in there mentioned about personal branding, and I quite like that idea. And they said that personal branding, a brand of someone, is something that once you walk out of the room, okay, it's the perception of you that people have, which are inside the room. So what other people think about you, that is effectively what your branding is. So it's always important that we try to like improve our brand on a day-to-day basis. We try to improve our personality. So in order to do that, we need to have a critical view of ourselves. We need to be honest in terms of reflecting on our personality, how we appear, how we communicate with other people. And in order to do that, it's always important to seek feedback as well. So one thing is self-reflection, but other thing is feedback coming from your stakeholders. So we covered the stakeholder bit in our previous slide. And it could be your peers as well. So if you're working on a project, ask your peers for feedback. Is there anything that you could do differently the next time? So that will help you to improve and make your brand even stronger, which is useful when you walk into any organization. Is there anything that you want to add there, Natalie?
No, I think it's a really good segue into what we're going to plug next. So obviously we can't come here from Barclays and NatWest without plugging our opportunities for all you graduates. So what we're going to do is just show you, well, Usman can talk around the opportunities for NatWest, and I'll talk around the ones for Barclays. There's common graduate schemes, all very similar layouts between the both of them. It's just picking kind of what's the best fit for you, looking at the brand values, looking at the kind of the location of the offices as well. And yeah, I mean, in the finance world, they are very similar, aren't they, Usman?
Yeah, I would say so. obviously it's up to you which organization that you go for. But I strongly recommend apply for as many graduate programs as possible when the time comes. Okay. And perhaps if you are in the third year, in the penultimate year, you may want to look for the internships as well. If you manage to get into a finance graduate program, they generally ask you to complete the program over 3 years. I'm not sure if it's any different in Barclays. And that is because they you set like professional accountancy exams as well. So you effectively become a chartered accountant. The program that I was on was project management one, so that was a couple of years program. But I managed to get a few qualifications throughout the program as well, which were more sort of project management related. So they definitely help you. But I would also say there is an option of apprenticeships as well. If you think like you want to sort of start from the scratch instead of going through the graduate programs, there's an opportunity for that as well. I was an apprentice myself when I joined Lloyd's. Okay, and I then went on to doing another apprenticeship after that in project management world at Lloyd's as well. So there's no harm doing apprenticeships if you really want to see, if you really want to start from the scratch. And if you feel like graduate programs are not for you, you can always go for like other roles as well. So in a banking environment, I'm sure it will be the same for Barclays too. You can apply for a branch role, a role in the contact center, and try to step into an organization, because after COVID, I know it is quite challenging to get into the graduate programs. It's getting difficult. So do not lose hope if you don't get into it. But try always your best to apply for other roles outside graduate programs as well. So take that as a stepping stone. Yeah, so that's from my perspective, really. For the values. Natalie?
Yeah. Sorry, carry on, Usman.
No, on you go. That's it.
No, that's fine. I think I can't compete, obviously, with the screenshots that Usman used. His looks a lot better than mine, but what I can compete with is what I think that our graduate programme does at Barclays is it's phenomenal at getting graduates airtime with very senior individuals. So we have a graduate on my team, and he gets more time with the managing director than I do. So that he can really excel his career in the right way. She is always accessible for him. He's able to kind of talk to her about what we're both working on, but it's very much like him leading a lot of projects, and it's very development focused as well. A graduate on the Barclays scheme is kind of front and centre with a lot of really high profile projects in their comfort zone, of course. If that's not for them, then they will be given projects that they feel more comfortable with. If they don't want to present, they don't have to. But if they really do want to kind of get their name out there, that's what is kind of there for them. So yeah, just to kind of elbow you out the way there. But yeah, it's exactly the same. There's apprenticeships as well. There's summer internships. There's all that sort of stuff with banks. It's all very similar. So yeah, if you have any questions, we practice what we preach. So we are both on LinkedIn. And if you do want to reach out to us, if you've got any questions, or if you just want more information on graduate schemes, we can point you in the right direction. We are, as I say, we do work with the careers team as kind of mentors as well. So if you're interested in following that mentor route, if you get in touch with the careers team, they'll be able to kind of support you. And it's something that if you're interested in hearing more about presentation skills, interview techniques, you'd like us to do more of a deep dive session when we've got a bit more time as well on one area in particular, if you let the careers team know, and they can kind of filter it through back to us as well, and we can start planning that for you. So yeah, we'll put the ball back in your court. But what I'd like to do now is just open it up for some questions. I think there might be some questions in the chat as well. If you haven't submitted any yet, if you use the chat function, and I think Lindsay and the team are monitoring those. Before we kind of, to give a couple of minutes to really wait for some more questions, Usman, I do have a question on kind of preparation techniques. For obviously interviews and presentations can be quite daunting. Is there any techniques that you use to kind of get kind of centered and get ready for those that you want to share?
I I guess, well, a presentation I think can be slightly daunting for anyone, regardless of which stage of your career you are in. But I try to practice that beforehand, practice the delivery of the presentation. So even if it's not loud, I try to still go through stuff in my mind. So when I'm actually going into the presentation, delivering it, I'm not completely going blank, or I generally try to calm my nerves and also have a glass of water. I guess it could be simple as that. So you won't believe me the amount of times I had to rehearse for this presentation. So, but yeah, that's probably the only thing. Yeah, I wouldn't overdo it, to be honest with you, because that can sometimes add extra pressure. Same to you, Natalie. What is there any other tips that you would suggest?
I think for interviews that can be quite scary, I always try and think about the questions I want answered from them, because I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me. So I think if you focus on what you need to get from this interview, it almost reframes your mind a little bit. And I read a really interesting point of view to think about with interviews, and it was, physiologically, there is no difference in your body from when you're really nervous to when you're really excited. So if you keep that in mind, it's really just reframing your thoughts around, hold on, right, okay, I'm shaking, I'm getting my heart beating fast, it's beating faster, right, okay, I think I'm nervous, but am I excited for what's to come? Because I really want to work for this company. And when you start reframing like that, it really does help kind of calm you down, because you feel more in control as well. So I think that's kind of my main ones.